All right, so let's get started with the Twitter JS review. Who has questions? No one's here. Wait, sorry.
Oh.
Say all that louder.
Like questions about the extra credit notes on.
Okay,
I
sure.
thought you just asking who has questions in general.
Sure. Here, but I'll mark it down so we remember to get to it. What is it?
We could get our socket IO to work, so we just kind of wanted to show.
Oh, yeah, I don't really know. we can look at it. I think it's working in this. Yeah. Okay. I don't know why I put that as number 5.
Oh, I have another.
Sure.
It's about like the next parameter and like using the verbs that we have and like what do we need and like why do we need them.
Okay, so like what's up with next? Okay. Other questions? I'm gonna do this thing where I like collect them all and then go through them. Yeah.
So the point at which I got stuck, and I'm not sure if this is the workshop or not, is the routing, add a single user route and view.
Okay, so
We were supposed to make changes to the res render part of that function, and the data object that was in there, and no matter what changes we made, it just wasn't doing it.
so the single user view.
Yeah, we didn't get to the rest. That's where we got stuck.
Okay. Yeah. We can take a look at it. There's a chance that I won't know your particular problem.
We looked at the
look
video,
at
and the video coded it totally different.
Okay.
When I tried to refactor my code to make those changes that were similar to the video, it still didn't do anything.
Okay.
And
So this might be something we should look at one-on-one, but we can go over it. Yeah.
Passing like variables to router document and sort of so like
Oh, so like params.
yeah.
Yeah. Like params and yeah.
So I guess this is a much more general question. Sort of like, so I noticed for the review of video, they use state instead of
Oh, do they? Yeah.
which kind of like brought me to wonder, like I guess like in the wild, how do you decide sort of what modules sort of to use, and then also like best practices like with regards to those modules, I guess is
Yeah, or like which package, in this case, which templating package to use.
Yeah.
So how do you decide what packages to use?
yeah, and how do you like then once you kind of pick one or maybe once you like voice it out to figure out the best practices.
Right. And then how do you use it? The answers here are sort of depressingly ad hoc, I think. Yeah.
Sort of unrelated, Git pull. We're trying, my collaborators trying to pull all the changes we made, and so whenever we do a pull request or do a Git pull, it says that everything's up to date, and then that they're getting it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So git pull. How does it work? What exactly is middleware? Good question. Okay. Other questions before we get started? It's like a bunch of them. Okay, cool. Okay, let's start with Git. Yeah, let's start with Git. So you said that you were Git pulling and it was like you're up to date.
Yeah.
Were you pushing on the other side?
Yeah, I already pushed it. It's up. I can see the changes made. It might get the problems on.
Mm-hmm.
Check that. So I said, okay, now she does the pull, and it says there's up to date nothing.
And you're both pointing at the same remote. That that might be the thing. So when you okay, so let's see. This actually works. Okay, so when you push or pull in Git, you're pushing or pulling to or from a remote. And so that's why the command looks like git push origin master, for example. That's saying push to this remote, the branch master. But origin is just a label that maps to an actual like URL, like an actual location. And the way you see them is by doing this git remote -v. And that'll show you all of the remote origin paths, which they'll probably look like HTTP something on your system, unless you have SSH keys set up, which you might. And you want to make sure that those are the same too. Otherwise, the names actually don't have to be the same, but the locations do.
So she should be able to say git pull origin master?
Yeah, but only if you both have the same origins, or rather, only if her origin matches the one that you just pushed to.
We had the same issue, and we were like going over it over and over. We felt like a while.
Did you fork?
So yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
she forked
like
the phone.
yeah. So you're not supposed to, because you're supposed to push to the same one. So like if you're on my account, it created the problems on my account. And it would like push to my account. She didn't fork it to her own, so she pushed it to my account and then pulled it from my account.
Wait, she has to, but she doesn't have it yet.
So like if she forks it to my
At
Yeah,
all,
she's a
though?
collaborator.
On the same repo?
Yeah.
And if you both run git remote -v, you both see the same origin.
So she has.
Yeah, which you can do by saying like git remote add and then the name of a remote, something.
But my remote is origin.
Well, your remote is this whole thing. I mean, it's your remote. Your remote is actually not this whole thing, but this is just the name, like the local name for this remote repository.
So when she creates git remote add, she needs to come up with a name, like your name, and
Yeah.
then like paste your link docket, and then it will.
So we're not supposed to clone it?
No,
You
do
could.
you mean fork or clone? You can do any of these things. It's fine. It's just that in order to share code, in order to push it across, you have to push to the same actual like git remote that she is pulling from.
What if you have nothing to push? Like you didn't do any code on you're just trying to pull all the changes out.
Then you clone the remote that you want to clone.
What if she already cloned it and then I made changes and now she wants to get those changes?
Then you should be able to push and she should be able to pull. Sure.
That's where we're at right now. She has,
So you made the repo and then pushed changes to it.
yeah, there's changes pushed to it. When we open it up, it says, like on hers, it says this branch is 4 commits behind Janelle UR5 : master. So now it says that, but then when we do a pull request, it says everything's up to date.
Oh, wait. What are the, when she does get remote minus v, what does that say?
Yeah.
Get remote minus v? When you type this, get space remote space minus v.
Yeah, yeah, and so when I look at, when I compare my repository, she has her repository up, you can see that it's not the same. It's because she forked her repository, so she's trying to pull from her repository, but she forked from yours. She's not pulling directly from yours. So we tried it from mine, where she get that pull, and then I was like, all right, well, try my repository, and it gave like an error or something.
Yeah, I don't know if you can just say, here, let's try it. Git pull, conquer Violet's work. This is almost certainly not going to work. Oh, crap. That does work. Okay, well, so, so you can just provide a Git.
But what is fatal using merger related?
So this, well, yeah, this is because that is to be expected because I literally said try and pull like a completely unrelated repository as master, which you can force it to merge unrelated histories, but usually that's not what you want. So that's working. Okay. So yeah, if I wanted to, so right now this is Emily's Twitter. You don't know Emily, but an instructor who used to work here. This is her Twitter.js solution. If I wanted to make a fork of this, well, I guess if I wanted to like actually make a GitHub fork, I would go to like the GitHub UI and like make a fork. But I can just make my own version of this repository by well, first of all, I already have my own version of this repository, and it's this. This folder is a Git repository. That's kind of how Git works. All clones are themselves repositories. So you don't need the version on GitHub necessarily. This has everything. It has all of the history.
So like I tried that so I tried pulling, for instance, Git pull from our library. I think my library, and I did Git pull, and then I copied the link. And then I typed master, and I got.
It should. You need the remote, right? I think you need the remote. Git pull origin master.
It says remote. No.
When you said git pull origin master. Well, I'll come take a look at what's going on there. Yeah.
Sorry, can I add a question to this?
Yeah.
Can you like kind of just delve into a little bit like
Yes. Although I don't know how good I'll be at it because I don't. Do you have like a specific question about Nunchucks?
No, it just like I guess I just got a little overwhelmed during all this stuff because there were like all these steps and I didn't understand what the steps were for.
Okay. Oh, to configure Nunchucks.
Yeah, like.
To be completely honest, I'm happy to talk about this. I kind of want to deprioritize it because this is the only time you'll ever use Nunchucks in this program, or possibly for the rest of your entire life. So, or maybe the first job you get will like use it extensively. That's always possible, but it's not the most common technology, I think. Unless you're working somewhere that was using Django and now is using, like, has a JavaScript backend. That's really the use case for it. Okay, we'll do another Git deep dive in a minute. I'm gonna mark this as like half answered. Okay, next question. So actually, okay, the nunjucks thing is a good segue into like, how do you decide what packages to use? Okay, so the video uses Swig because I think at the time, whoever was writing the workshop Googled like JS templating, or maybe they'd used it, or they'd seen someone who used it, and one of the top hits was Swig, and they were like, sure, that looks good. That's a reasonable enough way to decide what package to use. Other decent heuristics are, let's see, are to, I'm trying to get a browser window. So let's see, JS templating. So one thing you'll find is that we could use template strings, mustache. Mustache is one of the most widely used template systems. So I guess we could have used mustache. Handlebars, minimal templating on steroids. Why is it on steroids? It just doesn't seem great. If you want to like decide between a bunch of packages, you might just go look at npm, look up templating, and be like, what's the most popular thing? So templating is pretty popular, which is surprising. Handlebars is second. Babel template, that's interesting. These are not absolutely the best search results. But if you go through, oh, render templates using any engine. Oh, so this looks like the underlying thing that Express uses. So if you go through and like do some combination of like Google the problem, see what answers you get on Stack Overflow, and then like see what's popular on NPM, like this thing is clearly used a lot. That doesn't mean, there's a lot of things that doesn't mean for sure, but it means that like it's probably not complete garbage, which is basically the standard we have in JavaScript libraries these days. So that's, none of that is like deeply satisfying, but that is basically the heuristic that we use. Also, for a lot of common problems, there's something built into the tool chain you're using. So for example, we would, like, you won't have to pick a server-side templating engine if you're using React, because probably you should just use React on the server side, and it will be your templating system. Basically, JSX will be your templating system. Similarly, you might, where was I going with that sentence? I don't know where I was going with that sentence. If you, like, if you're writing a web server, you might be like, oh, should I use Express? Should I use Koa? Neither decision is bad, right? And for the most part, people will pick something that's like comfortable with them, that like other people on their team have used. You might ask what your friends and colleagues are using. It's all very sort of word of mouth. Figure out what the community can support you in doing. Koa? Koa is actually quite different, I think, because it uses it. Okay, first of all, the first hit is camping. The second hit, though, look at that font. Isn't that great? It uses async and await, which is kind of cool. Which actually basically means that you can, it looks like Koa, I might like Koa better, but Express is definitely the more common one. And so if you're thinking about writing an app that other people will have to be looking at the code of and understand, there's that cost. Like someone will be like, okay, what is this new thing? Do I have better answers for you? No, not really. That's if you see something and it looks cool, give it a try. If it ends up being horrible, you'll have learned something valuable. I would say there aren't really wrong answers. Sometimes there are wrong answers, and sometimes you'll pick them. Sometimes there are wrong answers, and I pick them. I've actually suggested to a final project group once to use one particular library, and it was just very, very hard for them, and they got tied in several knots. And the other library they had been talking about using, I was like, oh, don't use that. I don't know how its performance is, and I found out later that it uses the library I told them to use, but provides a nicer interface on it. So I was like, okay, that was wrong. That was just a wrong decision. It was my fault. Yeah. What's that? That was Phaser and Pixie. So FYI, if you're making a game, use Phaser.js. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, although any list like that is sort of almost immediately out of date, but you can always be like most popular JS front-end frameworks 2018? It's January. How do you know? Okay, so here's what's this guy? Eric Elliott says, okay, first of all, yes, JavaScript has just a crapload of packages. Second of all, React is probably the thing to learn.
What is React?
We are definitely going to learn React. So React gives you, it handles drawing the page. So I should be more specific than that. It handles assembling the DOM. So it gives you tools where you can basically write functions that return pieces of the page and kind of compose them together, and the whole page both renders and stays up to date as data changes. That's its big win, is it gives you this way to express how the view should change in response to changing data that many people, myself included, find quite intuitive, or at least find easy to understand with some thought. Yeah, I keep hearing about Vue as well. I haven't used it. React is beating Vue in user satisfaction. When I've glanced at it and kind of been like, I don't know. It doesn't. There's things about it that I don't like, but there were things about React that I didn't like when I first looked at it. So, okay, jQuery has fallen. So basically, you can find articles like this about almost anything. Like, what are the databases to use? What are the, I don't know, backend frameworks to use? What version of Lodash should I use? Which broken operating system should I use? Which broken processor should I use? Yeah.
So, this is a general question in terms of, real world. So, because it's constantly changing, what's popular,
yeah,
utility to use, whatever, how easy would you say it is, or difficult, to kind of, what's the learning curve when you're transitioning from one to another? Do you think that they're all pretty similar in, at the core, and then it's just, syntax or, things like that?
I think, on some level, they're all doing math operations, loads, and stores. So yeah, they're all the same. But on another level, there are a few big patterns that tend to come up. And if you work at a given part of the stack for long enough, you will sort of learn those patterns. Maybe a new one will come along that just blows everyone's mind. When React came out with the virtual DOM, it wasn't like a completely brand new idea. Also, you don't know what I'm talking about exactly, but like the concepts underlying React were not like brand new, but they were like newish, and they were packaged in with like new syntax, and altogether it felt revolutionary, and like people were very excited, and it took a little while for people to digest what it meant. But for the most part, it's like very similar patterns being expressed in slightly different syntactic ways. And so you will learn that and start to get a handle of like, oh, this is a like reactive pipeline framework, or this is like a model view controller framework, or you'll start to build up the language and familiarity with patterns so that you can understand these things better. So much like learning languages, I think the first one is hard, the second one's a little easier, but by the time you learn the fifth or sixth one, they're all the same, kind of. Yeah. This would be a kind of fun. This would be a kind of fun talk to give, right? Like 20 languages in 20 minutes. Okay, I'll think about doing that. Okay, I think that's like relatively answered, right? It's not a great answer, but there aren't great answers. The underlying thing you should be picking up on here is that we're going to learn particular technologies, like you're going to learn React, you're going to learn SQLize. It's not that those won't be useful, they will definitely be useful, but more useful is the ability to pick up new technologies, and that process is what you're learning now, right? Like in addition to the technology, you should be sort of focused on how you are learning it, because you're going to have to do it again and again and again. It's like not the last time you're going to learn something, this is really just the first. Okay, what's middleware? So middleware is ware that sits in the middle. Specifically, it's software that sits in the middle of generally another piece of software. So in Express, you can't really see the ends of it, but, make router with sockets, man. So at the very top of the app, where is it? Where do we create this thing? After us, there we go. Yeah, so at the top of that here, we create our Express application. That kind of creates the top and bottom layers, which the top layer will like take an incoming request and do a little bit of processing on it, and then start invoking middleware. A key thing with middleware is that each piece of middleware, like it stacks up. You'll see middleware used in Express and also later in Redux and various other programs. And when you see that word middleware, you should be thinking, okay, this means that I'm going to be providing like a piece of software in some form, usually a function. In JavaScript, it's usually a single function that is going to get invoked with data and then pass it along to the next piece of middleware. And that just keeps going on all the way down the pipe until you get to the last piece of middleware, which is not middleware. It's also not called endware. It's just like the end. It's just when it's done. For Express, that means the response gets sent back. For Redux, which we'll look at later, it means the state of the application actually changes. Does that, I forget whose question that was, but does that help? Okay, yeah. So it's just a term. It's a term for like a function that gets stacked up with other functions in that way.
So is it like a high order function?
It's not hardware, or hardwire, you say? It's
a higher order function?
Sometimes. In Express, it's not. Is it? Well, no, it is, right? Oh, yeah. All of this is middleware. So when So anything in Express, anything that takes res next is middleware. So this is middleware. This is middleware. This is middleware. These are all pieces of middleware that are kind of near the end of the pipe, so it maybe doesn't feel like they're middle so much. But there could be stuff after them. In particular, there probably is at least one thing after them, right? There's probably an error handler. No, there's not. But there should be. Router. Dictionary setting or anything. So I could do like router.use rec res next. I think it takes error rec res next. And then do something with this error. This is error handling middleware that usually goes at the end. I could also just have normal middleware that does something at the end of the request. Maybe it like adds some headers and then compresses it, or maybe it, when we talk about sessions, maybe it like adds some headers so that the server can remember your session, it can remember who's logged in. And so all of these, all of these functions are like part of the middleware stack. Yeah. It's a more general term for functions that stack up in this way. And to answer your question, these aren't higher order functions. I mean, arguably they are, right? This is a function that takes a request, a response, and a function and does something. So sorry, it's not a higher order function. It's not returning a function. But that's just how Express implements its middleware. Other libraries will implement middleware as higher order functions. It's not uncommon. So like in Redux, middleware is a function which takes the next middleware function and returns a new middleware function, which is some crazy functional programming recursive shit, but it does work. And the difference there is flexibility. If you stack your functions in that way, it's harder to at runtime decide which ones of them can run. In this way, Express gets a lot of control over which pieces of middleware run for any given request. Okay. Do I deserve this X for what is middleware? For now, don't stress about it too much. The only kind of middleware we're working with is Express middleware, and you know that when you see it because it looks like this. It takes the request, the response, and next, and is handling a request. Anything like that is middleware. Okay. Next, params in router.get. So like this. What would you like to know about params? Whoever is questioning this was, consider, yeah.
I guess it's just like maybe like just go over an example of using one. It seems like perhaps only non-intuitive in the sense that like there's several layers to them. Sort of like just one for example, like I guess for ID, how that's what's getting passed where, how it's getting when ID gets defined.
Yep. So ID gets defined as interesting. ID gets defined as a param here. So when we call .get, Express parses the string and it looks for stuff that looks like this, like colon some JavaScript identifier. And it says, okay, I'll match any path that starts with /tweets/ and then has something after it, and I'll capture that thing that's after it as ID. ID is a variable. Yeah, it's not like a, it's not like, this could be anything. It could be ID, ASDF, and then I just have to make this ID ASDF. That's all. Yeah, it's nothing magical. It's just a placeholder that gets filled in by the actual parameter that was in the URL. Yeah, that's how Express knows. It'll match URLs that it'll literally match tweet/ID. Here you want tweet/ like some ID, which I want you to capture and make available as a param. And that's basically how they work. Yeah.
So if you have like /tweet/ :ID /user tweets whatever, like you have multiple params.
So like this is a bad example. Should we use users, username, tweet ID like that, maybe, or like tweet ID.
So like would the request.params contain both the username and the tweet ID?
Yep.
And then so you would call like name with request.params username, and then you get tweet ID by doing like ID is like
ID. Yeah, in this particular case, you could just, the username is irrelevant, right? if we have the tweet ID, that's all we need to get a tweet. But yeah, in general, maybe this is like tweet / like, it's not really the tweet ID, it's like the tweet number, or tweet like sequence number, like literally your first tweet, your second tweet, your third tweet. And then, yeah, you could do something like find all tweets for name, and then render, I guess let's just write this, if we're gonna write this. Single tweet page. So this is like a single user tweet page. So I'm gonna get your nth tweet by saying find all of your tweets, and then render tweets for name of rec.params.tweet sequence number. Maybe sequence number, it's just better to call this index. Does that make sense? Okay. Cool.
You're allowing to access
Yes. In general, yes. You should worry about like, oh, does this user, or does whoever can see this page have access to the thing that they're trying to access? So like right now, I think there's no authorization or anything in this app, right? But there could be. Yeah.
Can you just explain like what params is explaining to you, and then this kind of like, it's like I can't visualize like what's being accessed with rec.params.tweetindex.rec.params, you know?
Oh yeah, so we could log it. Just it's gonna take a second. So when you say you can't visualize what it is,
yeah, like where's params coming from?
It's being put on the request by Express.
So it's an Express.
It's a property of a request that has gone through a a matcher, a route matcher that has params on it. I think it's a property of all requests. I think Express just puts an empty params object on every request at the beginning, and then it gets filled in like this. Oh no. Okay. So next, does that answer any other questions about params? Okay. All right. Now the single user view. Let's look at that. This is the single. Okay, so what's happening here? We're fetching all of the tweets for this user and then rendering them on, I think we only have one view, right? Do we ever have another template? We don't, right? It's just index the whole time. Okay.
So
I'm not sure what to say.
have all of that in the object, right? So the object inside render has title, Twitter.js, tweets for name, show form, true, username, param, username. So when we were coding, the only line we had was tweets, essentially that tweets for name line in the object. And nothing happened. So you have to have all of that in there in order for it to do whatever it is it's supposed to do.
You have to have a lot of it in there. So let's see.
So that was unclear from the workshop.
Yeah, so if you don't have, okay, if you don't have tweets, this is going to fail. The other stuff I would expect, so like if title is null or undefined, then I would kind of expect where even is the title? Okay, so I think title we don't need, because I don't see it in there. We might need show form. That's in index HTML. So I'm not sure what nunjux does if you have an if statement but you don't define the variable here. The most JavaScripty thing to do would be to branch false, but it may also fail. Was it failing with an error? Like, was it printing an error to the console?
No, what we just get, so my understanding was that we were supposed to get a page with just the tweets for just that one person or that one user. When we did it, we just got, it was pretty much like a blank page. So we have the whole Twitter page, but the list of tweets was blank.
Okay.
And when we tried to render the code, we actually had tweets, and then the equivalent in, I guess, in our code is lists, the way they have it in the workshop is lists, not tweets for names. So we set tweets to lists, and nothing happened. But when I'm looking at the solution code, I see title, show form, and username.
So the easiest way to check and see if those matter is to add them to your code and see if it helps. And if it does, then we'll know that you do need those things to be defined because of something in the templates. Otherwise, it's something else going on. Like maybe there's a problem in find, or was TweetBank given to you?
That's in the list.
Find's given? Okay.
It's in the list value. So that's why I needed tweets
Oh, also this is probably wrong. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at your code specifically. I'm not even sure if these are completely required. I wouldn't guess that they are. Oh yeah, because here it's not here.
Yeah, the only reason I'm asking is because we have that line, but it's still not working. So the only other thing I can think of is that we have to have something else that's in that object that we don't have.
Okay.
I couldn't figure that out from the workshop. The way the workshop was written, I thought I get that line speaks, speaks for name like Grant Stevens. I understand that part, but
it doesn't actually look to me like those things are required. So I'll always. Let's look at this after the Q&A. Okay. Defer. Okay, what's up with next? So, do we ever call next here? No. Well, that's disappointing. So next is useful if you have, it's useful in two cases. One is if you have middleware that needs to do something, usually something asynchronous, and then continue on once it's done that asynchronous thing. So, please work. So if I don't know if I can like engineer an asynchronous thing to have happen here just now, but if you are doing some asynchronous operation, like for example, you're reading a file or hitting the database, and you are doing it in middleware that needs to run before other middleware runs, then you need to call next in order to get Express to send the request down the middleware pipe. You will know this is happening to you if you are trying to write a middleware function and you are doing something in it, but you're not planning to terminate the request. So you're not planning on calling res.render or res.send. The other use case for next is to handle errors. So, and that's by far the case you're going to use in the most, is when something fails, you can call next with the error, and that'll send the error all the way down to the error handling middleware, which here we don't have explicitly defined error handling middleware. We're using Express's built-in error handler, which will go and take that error and sort of send it to the browser and pick an appropriate error code if it can figure it out. So those are the two use cases for next. It's like stacking middleware and being explicit about when you want to go from one middleware to the next, and then sending an error down the pipe, which is, it is going from one middleware to the next middleware. You're just explicitly telling Express, hey, I failed, so go to the error handling middleware next.
How do you know when the next invocation is included in a package or not? So like, because in some of our code we didn't have to put next because it like automatically goes to the next one.
Yeah, actually, yeah, we actually don't need it anywhere here.
So like, how do you know that, okay, if I have this package, I don't need to put next, or should you just defer and just put next?
Like in the function signature?
Yeah.
You never need it if you're not calling it. It's having it in there, like Express will always pass it in, but if you're not calling it, you can just drop it on the floor. Because JavaScript functions can declare fewer arguments than they're called with, and the remaining arguments just get ignored. Yeah.
May not be clear or helpful, but could we have used something like this for when we were writing like the node shell?
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
Okay, so that would have been a good getting like if you were reading out from file using you have to implement either like another way or like call prompt after something else is finished.
Yeah.
negative.
Yeah, the next is kind of the special case of a callback, right? It is a callback, really, like when you're done, call next. And I think we did implement something similar, like, right? It's when you're done, you ended up passing in a callback, no? Yeah.
Yeah, but if you had to like write in, you had to put it in the command stuff, I guess.
To call it.
So they call it the next like prompt, right? Prompt, right? So I think if you use this to put it in bash reference file, which is like the overall one. It may be also like harkening back to like sending to
I think maybe Node Shell just could have been better designed. I think even with callbacks as they're structured there, you could have put the prompts in Bash.js, but I'd have to go back and look. Yeah. Always include next. People differ on best practices. I don't think it's good practice to include parameters that you're not using in general. In fact, a lot of fluenters, yeah, it's a difference of opinion. A lot of fluenters complain about it, though, by default. Yeah. Um, so, oh, you mean like you put it? Oh wait, you put this like down here. Yeah, that's definitely not gonna work. No, because middleware is this explicit stack. It has to, like, the body has to get parsed before you can use it. It doesn't have to go before everything, right? Like, it could just go down in front of any post request where you're using the body. Like, it's really just this one. So you could put it here. Like, actually, you could do that kind of thing. If you want it. But it does have to be before the thing that uses direct.body. All right. Let's see. What's next? What is up with next? Okay. Socket.io. Okay, what was up with Socket.io? Make router. Okay, so I think this is given to you, right? Make router with sockets. Yes. And then this part. Wait. This is the thing you have to add, I think. Right, that's the other part of it. Oh, so you can't do like connect? Oh.
that IO.
Oh, so I've seen it.
And I think we basically have everything here. We look at it with the fellow and the legend and basically have everything except for like appending it to the DOM at the end. But
And then when you started the server,
it would say like connected to server using WebSockets exclamation mark in the console, but like we're not sure why it's what something with IO was undefined.
and this part was given to you as well, I think, right?
Yes. Yeah, or we rewrote it so that it was
To the new version of Socket.io? Or,
So we have, well, I guess the difference I see right here is that our server variable, we have large server equals app.listen 3000 instead of like console.log listening on port 3000.
oh, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's the only difference we have.
I'm not sure. One thing I can think of is that I know Socket.io, you built this from scratch, right? And the workshop has some example code
Like copy paste this or change this in your code, and then the very last part is like, oh, you have to define what object goes inside the yeah, and then and the other part was how you append it to the DOM, but like I said, our IO was defined all the time, and we're not sure why. Because like we can't like require app.js from Grout. It was that's like a circular issue, and then they were like, oh, you get around that, and I think it's like functional programming where you wrap everything inside of the function.
Right, and then you pass in, and then you pass IO in,
Yeah, we did that, and
but IO wasn't defined. Okay, I would have to look at this. One possibility that occurs to me is that Socket.io changed recently, and the code in the workshop may need to be updated. Another possibility is that you're somehow not passing this in quite right. Yeah, we can take a look at it. Okay. I think we have another. Do we have the intro to schema design in right now? We have intro to SQL right now? All right. If you had specific questions, I will come to you. If not, have a great evening. Get out of the sauna and into the freezing cold.
Yeah, I know, right?
I prefer the sauna. I'm not minding the sauna that much.